Alright, what is going on, you guys? Welcome back, man, to yet another King Japes video. Now, today we're going to be talking about a brand new point and shoot film camera that I received from a very good friend of mine. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but we're also just going to be talking about some new kind of point and shoot pickups. Now, for those of you guys who are new to this channel, you guys know that I love to experiment a lot with different point and shoot film cameras, especially the ones that seem to be more underrated than, you know, those hyped up cameras. But before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Squarespace, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them later on in this video. But for now, let's jump into the two new point and shoot film cameras that I have recently picked up. Alright, so the first camera, folks, is going to be inside of this case right here. So I don't know if you guys can see this. The case here is a little bit messed up. It looks like it's weathered for some reason, but it was one of Canon's kind of older cases. And just, you know, a quick little peek, it is a Canon point and shoot film camera. Now, funny story, I first saw this camera up on like Instagram. I believe I was just going through kind of like the Discover page, and it instantly kind of hooked me in because of not only the shape, but also just the form factor of the camera. The crazy thing is they are not that common. Even on eBay, I'm not even seeing much of it. And so I went to the only person I feel like I can go to about point and shoot film cameras and probably has the most knowledge on it, which is my friend from another mother, Compact Camera Club. Now, Compact Camera Club, we met years ago, and he's a really good friend of mine, and I highly suggest you guys check out his Instagram if you guys haven't already. But he is all about his compact point and shoot film cameras. And so I hit him up and I'm like, hey, do you know anything about this camera? And you know, a couple days later, he hit me back and said, come by, you can have my copy. And so he gave me this camera for the free. So just a huge shout out to him, not only just for the kind gesture, but because he's just an awesome person. And I would highly recommend anybody who's into point and shoots to check him out. But boom, here it is. He gave it to me and it is in our presence. So huge thank you to Compact Camera Club for this camera. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this camera, if you guys can guess already by what it is, it's not your typical Canon point and shoot. This one seems to be one that is kind of slipped under the rug, and I'm gonna unbox it here on camera with you guys. So just here on the front, lifts up and opens up this kind of Velcro patch, and boom, as simple as that, the camera comes out. So ladies and gentlemen, this camera, folks, is the Canon Sprint. Literally on the top says Sprint. So it reminds me a lot of the Minolta Freedom 2, which is kind of this boxier shaped camera. And just like on the Canon one here, it does kind of have like a rectangular lens opening. So that was one thing that initially, you know, I saw a lot of resemblance from. So just the overall shape, that's really why I was intrigued by this camera. It is made out of all plastic, but there are a ton of really cool features. And you know, if anybody out there is looking for a affordable point and shoot, this actually would be one that I would recommend, even though I haven't been able to get a roll through it. Just from what I am seeing, it just looks and feels really, really fun. So first things first, on the front here, to open up that lens, you have that little switch. So that's a plus, your lens is always covered. Now once it opens it up, it exposes the lens up there, right on the front. And the Canon Sprint has a 35mm 3.5 lens. It's saying that it has a macro function as well, down to 45 centimeters, which is pretty cool. And of course, autofocus. So the camera is super lightweight. Like I said, it is made out of all plastic. This is what the backside looks like. I'm a sucker for these kind of diagonal lines on backs of cameras. It adds a nice little grip to it. On the very top of the camera, obviously it has the name of it, Sprint. You have your flash, which obviously is gonna turn your flash on. And then you also have your mode selection switch. So this one is gonna be for your macro. You're gonna actually have to hold that down, I believe, to photograph with it. It doesn't stay down there. And yeah, that is your macro function. And then it shows your frame counter right here, as well as your shutter button on the top. Now this camera does take AA batteries, which is always a plus in my opinion. AA or AAA, any of the more common battery types is always a really, really good thing, because if you're out and about and you run out of batteries, you can easily find these very accessible batteries. So on the back side, opens up standard point and shoot stuff. Put your film in there, lock it up, and you're ready to shoot. Now here is what the shutter sounds like, folks. the wind up afterwards is actually a little bit louder. So that is the Canon Sprint. I'm very, very excited to shoot with this camera and to do a video on it. And I want to ask you guys, do you have any suggestions for video ideas that I could do with this other than just a, standard here's me out shooting with it type of video? Let me know in the comment section down below. I would be very, very happy to hear you guys' recommendations and hopefully put that into play. Now, before we move on to the next camera, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to our sponsor for this episode, the good folks over at Squarespace. Squarespace is your all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Now, as a photographer, Squarespace makes it super easy to build up your own photography website in just a few simple steps. Now, once you get signed up, Squarespace has a bunch of award-winning templates that you can use to get your website up and running in minutes. They also let you customize your website with different pages like the photo gallery, an online shop for you to sell prints or merchandise, and possibly my new favorite feature, the appointment scheduling. All you simply have to do to get somebody to book you for a shoot is send them over to your website, have them hit the appointment page, and it's that simple. They will be able to book you for a shoot. So if you guys want to get started with your own photography website today, head over to squarespace.com/KingJapes or enter promo code KingJapes at checkout to receive 10% off of your first purchase of a domain or a website. Huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode. Now let's jump back into it. All right, so for the second camera, I'll be honest with you, it's one that I am not too confident in. I actually think it's probably the weirdest point and shoot that I have ever owned. Now, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Ricoh, the Ricoh AF7. Now, if you guys have had any experience with this camera, comment down below what you guys think of it so far. Okay, so in terms of the actual shape of the camera, I really like it. It's nice and boxy. It reminds me a lot of the Autoboy or the Nikon L35 AF. But the Ricoh AF7, you guys, has a ton of weird features. Now, when I first got this camera, it does take AA batteries. I put the batteries in, and with the lens cap on, it doesn't shoot. But one thing that I found out was that you need to have the lens cap on at all times because that is kind of how you turn the camera on. So in order for this camera to function, you need that lens cap. When the cap is on, the camera is off. When the cap is off, the camera is on. So that was kind of the weird thing for me at first as well, because what if you lose this? Is this constantly metering and draining the battery all day long? And if that's the case, then losing this would be a nightmare because your batteries are just going to drain all day long. I'm gonna give you guys a quick close look at it. It says Ricoh autofocus system here up at the top. One weird thing that I'm not 100% sure about on this camera is that when does the autofocus activate? There's no light in the viewfinder other than a little flash, kind of like red warning light to let you know you might need flash for this photograph. Other than that, there's no real kind of confirmation for autofocus, which is weird because in a sense, if you just, randomly point this camera like this, it's going to make the photograph every single time you press that shutter button. So I'm not even sure if the autofocus is working in this or if, it really is just that fast, which I doubt because my Sony's not even that fast. But this camera does sport a nice 38mm 2.8 lens. Kind of standard and typical for these style cameras, but one thing that I will say about this camera is that it is a very handsome camera. So on the top here you have what looks to be just your typical kind of shutter button in green. Right under it though, folks, is a self timer switch, which is kind of cool. Just flip it over. Right next to it, folks, you have your rewind button. Now the rewind button to me is weird because it's a switch. It's not a physical button. It's a switch that goes from left to right, and it can be turned on at any time. So on, off, on, off. Then right here next to it, folks, you have your film counter or film monitor. It says both. So, say goodbye to the film counter, say hello to the film monitor. On the left side of the camera, you have your switch for your flash. Then on the back side, you have a nice little kind of grip here for your thumb to rest on. And it's just your typical kind of, boxy 80s point and shoot camera. So there's what the inside looks like as well. Now I'm very interested to see how this actually performs, because if it performs well and the lens is actually sharp, this could be a game changer. I've seen a lot of these before, just at thrift stores that I've passed up on because I've never really had information on it, but I was able to pick this one up for a super good deal. I think it was like $6. And so I just pulled the trigger to see what this was all about. But the Ricoh AF7, if you guys have any experience with this camera, just information that you guys can give me, I'm asking you for help, let me know in the comment section down below. But there you have it, you guys. Those are my 2 most recent film point and shoot pickups. Let me know if you guys have had any new cameras that you have been playing with, or again, if you have any experience on any of these. There goes the lens cap. But thank you guys, man, for tuning into today's episode. I'll see you guys in the next one. As always, this has been King James, Minolta Gang.